cups? I'll just drink it straight. Oh, is there? Okay. You guys want a cup or not? Nope.
I'm good.
Thank you. Are you all ready?
Lights are on.
Okay. I'd like to call the Monday, April 2, 2018 Oakwood City Council meeting to order. Would you please rise and join me with the pledge to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a roll call, please, Lori?
Mayor Duncan?
Here.
Vice Mayor Byington?
Here.
Mr. Stevens?
Here.
Mrs. Hilton? Here. Mr. Epley?
Here.
And may I have a report on the minutes of our March 12 regular session, work session, and executive session? Mrs. Hilton.
Yes, Your Honor, I've reviewed the minutes from all three of those meetings, and I found them to be correct and complete, and therefore I move that they be adopted as written.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So ordered. Under status reports, at our last meeting, we had numerous citizens come to talk about the tennis court improvement project at the OCC and the creation of additional parking for the OCC, and many comments were made, and we reported that we would get back to them, have an update as a status report at this meeting. We directed the city manager to prepare a comprehensive report sort of listing the history of the project, and while I want to go over some of the highlights of that, without objection, I'd like to attach it to the minutes of this meeting so it'll become a public record. Is everyone in favor of that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, then we will attach that. A couple of things I want to read, at least some of the summaries for people that want to know a little more about the background of this project. The city's plans to completely rebuild the Schaefer Park tennis facility this year. The existing six-court facility is over 60 years old, is in very poor condition, and has exceeded its useful life. The facility will include 5 tennis courts and an adjacent 25-space parking lot as depicted on the attached rendering, which was just in our Oakwood Register this week, or in our Oakwood Scene magazine. The parking lot supplements existing on-street parking in the area and will serve the OCC, Gardner Pool, Schaefer Park, and the 5 tennis courts. The plan will include extensive landscaping around the courts and parking lot. This project is being completed in cooperation with the Oakwood City Schools. As with the current courts, the new facility will be open to the public and will also be the home of the Oakwood High School tennis teams. Community discussion about the need to completely rebuild the tennis facility began in 2009 and 2010 when the city developed the Athletic and Recreation Master Plan. Preliminary planning for this facility began in 2016 when the 35-member Budget Review Committee was introduced to the project at their May of 16 meeting. The BRC was shown the first iteration of a design concept at their September 16 meeting. The first concept included building 4 tennis courts and a 39-space parking lot. This concept was also shared with the Oakwood schools. The BRC was briefed again on the project at their September 12, 2017 meeting and was shown both the 4-court and 5-court option, including parking lots. The concepts were also shared with Oakwood schools. The project was again mentioned to the BRC at their October 2017 meeting, where the 5-court and the 25 parking space plan was shown. The Oakwood schools were informed the city was pursuing this 5-court and 25 parking space plan. The Oakwood schools preferred the 5-court plan over the earlier 4-court plan. There is currently no parking lot serving the Oakwood Community Center, Gardner Pool, Schaefer Park, or the tennis court facility. The only available parking is on street alongside the residential roadways. This includes the 20 diagonal spaces on the south side of Collingwood Avenue adjacent to the tennis courts, and any other on-street parking areas in front of residential properties in the neighborhoods. Construction of the proposed parking lot will provide 25 parking spaces to serve the Oakwood Community Center, Gardner Pool, Schaefer Park, and the tennis facility. Coupled with 15 diagonal spaces that will remain on Collingwood, there will be a net increase of 20 parking spaces to serve the 4 public facilities. It is expected that this addition of 20 parking spaces will reduce the frequency and congestion of the public parking in front of the residential properties in the adjoining neighborhoods. Attached to this document that we're making a public record tonight is a list of all of the programs and activities that took place at the OCC in 2017, showing about 125,000 visits. Gardner Pool also had about 19,500 visits in 2017. We conducted 2 neighborhood meetings to present information about the project and to discuss the tennis facility and parking lot design. The first meeting was held on August 30, 2017. An invitation with the forecourt and 39 parking space rendering was mailed to 78 residential properties around the facility, all property owners in the area generally bounded by East Shantz, East Thruston, Schaefer Boulevard, and Patterson Road. Approximately 30 citizens attended. 8 of the 78 households invited were represented at the meeting. The remaining attendees were citizens living outside of the immediate project area. The second meeting was held on December 13, 2017. The attached invitation with a 5-court and 25 parking space rendering was mailed to the same 78 properties around the facility. 10 citizens attended. 3 of the 78 households invited were represented at the meeting. The remaining 6 attendees were citizens living outside the immediate project area. In addition to the 2 neighborhood meetings, plans for the project were shared with the general public through the February-March 2018 Oakwood Scene newsletter that was delivered to all Oakwood residents and business properties at the beginning of February 2018. Plans were also shared with the general public through a front page article in the February 14, 2018 Oakwood Register newspaper. Copies of these are attached to this document. We asked him to comment on the various citizen concerns that were given to council at the last meeting. I'm not going to go through every one of these because there were about 30 or so, but some of the highlights I wanted to talk about. The existing, one of the comments or / complaints was the existing facility has a water fountain, and they've not seen that in any, that's not seen normally at other public tennis facilities. Our current Schaefer Park and the tennis courts currently have a water fountain, and we are going to continue to have that. I think where that disconnect might have been is some of the original drawings probably didn't show that. There was a little tiny thing, but by the time you had to blow it up to see that there's in fact going to be a parking, a water fountain is going to continue to be part of the facility. There was a concern that we would have to install large lights in the future. We have no plans to place additional lighting in this residential area. One of the things that we are looking at is relocating the current electric wires that run right across the middle of the facility, and we're looking at talking with DP&L and the other public utilities about making those underground, which I think will improve the overall ambiance of that, as well as the OCC. The OCC people are very excited about trying to clean up that mess, which is a little bit of an eyesore. The other question, the other issue was in terms of ingress and egress from the parking lot itself. We agreed with the citizens that this needs to be a one-way only, park going in and out. We think that will improve safety. So the entrance, if you're going to park on that 25 new lot, you would come in from Collingwood and exit out onto East Shantz. And that would, there was some concern that it looked like you would have two-way driving through that parking lot. We are not going to do that. And I think that was a good suggestion made by some of the people here at the last meeting. And then There was also some concern about, the safety of the kids walking to the OCC, and we're going to continue to have sidewalks, from both directions. And we also are going to have 3 entrances at the northeast, and that was another addition that we thought was a good suggestion, the northwest and the southwest corners of the tennis courts, which would be 3 ways that you can enter into that facility to watch tennis. It is a public facility, and we encourage all Oakwood residents to use it. One of the things that was talked about was because the actual regulation of a tennis court, all the part that is in play is in fact regulation. The part that is not regulation is the difference between the baseline and as far back as you can go. We are about 3 feet short on each side. The reason that we can't do that, if we were to make it regulation, we would end up having to go into the Collingwood roadway and eliminate all of those parking spaces on Collingwood, and it added a little over $100,000 to the cost of the project, and we did not feel that was necessary, especially after talking with the Oakwood schools as far as their tennis facility. They have sent us a letter dated March of 18, and I would like to read that for the record as well. It's a brief letter. Oakwood schools are pleased to support the renovation of the City of Oakwood tennis courts located near the Oakwood Community Center that will be the home to the Oakwood boys and girls tennis. We appreciate being involved in the process, with suggestions from our tennis coaches being incorporated in the final design. Our coaches and the Ohio High School Athletic Association, which regulates high school sports in Ohio, have reviewed the design and find no safety or size issue with the courts. This cooperation and partnership between the district and the city fulfills a need for the Oakwood schools and will in the long run save the schools money. Oakwood schools have an outstanding working relationship with the City of Oakwood when providing venues to help fulfill the curricular, recreational, and athletic needs of our students. We look forward to continuing this partnership in the future. One thing of note is, the Oakwood schools have been using the tennis courts at UD for at least the past 5 or 6 years, I believe. Those courts are in need of substantial repair as well, and UD was not planning on renewing the lease with the schools unless the schools were willing to pay up to $200,000 to renovate those courts. So this partnership between the Oakwood schools and the Oakwood City to redo the Schaefer Park tennis courts, we think on the long run saves the taxpayers of Oakwood, primarily from the school side as opposed to the city side, some significant sums of money. It puts the Oakwood boys and girls tennis back in the heart of Oakwood, which is where we think it belongs. So we received some bids today, and while we haven't agreed on a final bidder yet, the one who appears to be the one that we will select is the same folks that built Lane Stadium, as well as the parking lot down at Lane Stadium, the additional parking that we were required to do. So we're excited about that. The bids are coming in right at what we had budgeted, and we think those folks will do a good job of renovating this project. Does anyone else have anything to say regarding that, this status report?
No, sir.
All right, well then I will have a drink of water then.
Good.
Next is the visitor section of the meeting, and anybody who would like to come down and address council, this would be the time for you to come down and state your name and address for the record, and we welcome you.
Hello, my name is Healy Jackson, and I live at 118 Lonsdale. After seeing the full-page ad in the Oakwood Register placed by citizens wanting to increase the awareness of the plan for the renovation of the tennis courts, I attended the council meeting on March 12th. As a member of the Planning Commission, I felt I had an obligation to better understand the city's intentions and the neighborhood's resistance. At that time, I found many of the citizens' arguments to be compelling, particularly the one that stated that we're a walking community, as well as neighborhood residents saying that they were willing to live with the inconveniences associated with swim meets and tennis matches. But in an effort to understand the city's why the city staff proposed the parking lot, I began to talk to residents who weren't really tuned into the controversy. In the most objective presentation I could muster, I started talking to people who play volleyball on Friday nights at Smith School, people who are regulars at Flyboys, library patrons, and people who attend the Oakwood Historical Society board meetings, as well as a social worker who works in Kettering but lives in Oakwood, and my Lonsdale neighbors, just to find out how they wished council would vote. Most everyone agreed it's a tough call, and I sense that some people embrace this neighborhood. We're a neighborhood of walkers, and yet when they have to get their kids someplace quickly, they're really glad those parking spots are there. What I did find is that people who disagreed with the building a parking lot, they tended to be more adamant in their position. They talked about green space, about being car-centric, and they challenged me to explain the need. I didn't take a straw vote, and I know that my approach was not scientific. I wasn't out to change anyone's opinion. I just wanted to hear what people were thinking. And to be honest, I personally prefer recreational space over a parking lot. But in my heart, I know that's just my values. It aligns with what I think. I'm not sure it's right for our community. I really believe, however, and this is why I wanted to speak even though it doesn't seem like a lot of people are talking, that you all have to vote for what you think is in the best interest of our community. And I have a high regard for your work and the time you dedicate to reaching your decisions. I've been able to read some of the background to the decision-making process. I just admire it, and I wanted to say that publicly. So thank you for whatever decision you make.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone, any comments for Mrs. Jackson? Anyone else would like to address council at this time? Welcome.
I'm Debbie Morgan. I live at 965 East Shantz, right across from where the parking lot will be. I still, two issues here. I failed to ever hear who wants these extra parking spaces. I just, like you've commented, the number of events and activities we have had in that park, yet everybody seemed to manage to get there and have a good time. So it just appears to me that it's a dark secret that maybe the OCC employees want it. I don't know. Nobody is saying who wants it. Out of all those people who have attended the meetings, where were those who said, yes, I really need it because I cannot get there when my child wants to because we're too far to walk? I've never heard anybody say that. And I think there's a couple more neutral things, not looking at details of the architect, but understanding there'll be bushes and shrubs put up to kind of make it look pleasant and whatnot. There's got to be a balance between making it look pleasant and making it a nice hiding place for illicit activities to take place there. And I think the thing that hits me the hardest is that it feels like this decision was made. And you really didn't want our input, you just filled a square. I'm sorry, I see it differently than you. The decisions had long been made, and you were just appeasing us by letting us come talk to you. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments. We take every citizen's comment to heart, and we just felt like the number of uses of that, it wasn't just about redoing a tennis court. We felt like the OCC needed some additional parking. We have other public parking lots in Oakwood, and we've not had illicit activity. We did have an incident on Collingwood, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, that there's enough people there on a daily basis and in the evening to keep that, if any of that happens, which I'm not certain I agree with your assumption, but even assuming something like that were to happen, our police department will be right on that and ensure that those things that you have concerns about will not occur. And we've had the ability to do that, given the fact that we have an outstanding public safety department. And I believe that if anything like that does occur, this 5-member council will be the first to be directing our city manager to direct our public safety director to make sure that place is up to snuff and people are there for the right reasons. We also have security cameras, on the OCC that we can direct or redirect as issues needed to make sure that nothing's going on at 2 or 3 in the morning, something like that. So, we will take that into consideration as part of the overall project.
I just wish we hadn't been led down the primrose path, that we could make a difference, that's all. That hurts more than having the parking lot.
Okay.
It just feels the wool was pulled over our eyes. And
Okay. Well, I somewhat disagree with that, given the list that I went through of all the public dialogue that we've had. The fact that, there's one of the interesting things I got is, in many cases on these types of issues regarding land use, and essentially this is a land use issue, it always seems like the majority of the people are satisfied with what this council is doing because we work closely with our city staff and try to anticipate, concerns. I think one of the reasons that we shrunk that parking from 39 down to 25 was it was too much. And, we probably, you could make an argument that we need even more parking than what we're putting in, but, we're taking into account some of those concerns of people that don't just live in that 4-block area that, have to walk or bicycle all the way from East Drive or all the way down from Northview or something like that. Okay. Thank you for your comments. They are appreciated. Anyone else wish to address council? All right, hearing none, we will move on to legislation. Mr. Stevens, this is a reprise of last meeting, has an ordinance.
Thank you, Mayor Duncan. This is an ordinance determining to proceed with the improvement of certain streets between certain termini in the city of Oakwood by lighting the same with electricity. This is an annual ordinance that is the second step of our 2019 street lighting program. It is the ordinance that authorizes the city to proceed with the project. It was introduced with the first reading at our March 12th council meeting. This is the second reading of the ordinance, and I move the council adopt it this evening.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, Lori, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Duncan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Byington?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mrs. Hilton?
Yes.
Mr. Epley?
Yes.
And Mr. Stevens has another ordinance.
This ordinance is levying special assessments for the improvement of certain streets between certain termini in the city of Oakwood, Ohio by lighting the same with electricity. This is the third and final step of our 2019 street lighting program. It allows for the costs of street lighting to be certified to the Montgomery County Auditor for assessment. This is the first reading of this ordinance, so I make no motion at this time.
Thank you. We'll address that at our next meeting, correct?
Yes.
All right. So, Mr. Stevens, you also have a third ordinance.
Yes, regarding sidewalks. This ordinance, an ordinance determining to proceed with the repairing of sidewalks and appurtenances thereto on East Drive and certain other streets between certain termini in the city of Oakwood, Ohio, providing that abutting property owners repair the same. This is an annual ordinance that is the second step of our 2018 sidewalk, curb, and driveway apron project. It was introduced with a first reading at our March 12th council meeting. This year's program will cover all city streets within the area generally bounded by Far Hills Avenue to the west, the Oakwood-Kettering boundary line to the east, East Drive to the south, and Aberdeen Avenue to the north. This is a second reading of this ordinance, and I move the council adopt it tonight.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, Lori, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Duncan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Byington?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mrs. Hilton?
Yes.
Mr. Epley?
Yes.
And do you in fact have a fourth ordinance?
I will go for 4, Mayor Duncan.
Okay.
An ordinance to levy special assessments for the construction or reconstruction of sidewalks and appurtenances thereto in the city of Oakwood, Ohio. This ordinance is the final piece of last year's sidewalk curb and apron project and assesses the sidewalk costs that have not already been paid directly by affected property owners. And for the record, that number at this point is around $6,900. It was introduced with a first reading at our March 12th council meeting. This is the second reading of this ordinance, and I move that council adopt it this evening.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? I can't do that. Any other discussion for Mr. Stevens? Hearing none. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Duncan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Byington?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mrs. Hilton?
Yes.
Mr. Epley?
Not to be outdone, Vice Mayor Byington has an ordinance.
Yeah, I get to join in the fun. This is an ordinance adopting the 2019 tax budget for the city of Oakwood, Ohio for the fiscal year beginning in January 2019. To comply with our section 6.01 of the city charter, this is an annual housekeeping ordinance to estimate the city's revenues and expenses for the calendar year of 2019. This is a first reading of this ordinance, so I'm not going to make a motion at this time. We'll address it in April.
All right, or May.
May.
May,
Yep, sorry.
thank you. And then you also have a second ordinance.
Yes. This is an ordinance to establish procedures and standards for small cell wireless facilities and wireless support structures. This is an ordinance to adopt regulations for small cell wireless facilities. The city has an existing ordinance, which is section 405 of the zoning code, that regulates wireless communication facilities throughout the city. However, cellular technology has evolved in the years since section 405 was first adopted. Now, in addition to traditional cell towers that can reach 150 feet or higher, wireless companies have begun installing smaller small cell facilities that can be mounted on smaller poles, such as our common 40-foot utility type pole. The city had hoped to regulate these small cell facilities through Section 405, but the Ohio General Assembly has other ideas. I know I'm sounding like a broken record. And,
I am shocked.
Yes, exactly, that the state is not working with us. Last year, they adopted Senate Bill 331, which effectively eliminated any local control over small cell facilities. Senate Bill 331 was subsequently found to be unconstitutional and is still mired in litigation. So the General Assembly turned to a new approach known as House Bill 478. House Bill 478 still eliminates certain aspects of local control, which we do not agree with, but it does allow local governments to have some degree of control over the design and placement of small cell facilities. House Bill 478 passed the Ohio House on February 14, 2018. We anticipate that it will be passed by the Senate and be presented to Governor Kasich for signature in the coming weeks, with an effective date sometime this summer. To that end, our law director and code enforcement officer have collaborated with over 20 local communities, including the 8 MVCC member communities and 12 to 15 other local communities, to draft design and procedural guidelines for these small cell facilities. These guidelines are intended to maximize local control within the parameters of House Bill 478 while ensuring that procedures are uniform throughout the greater Dayton area. This ordinance will create a new Chapter 955 in our Street and Public Services Code. And as, this is a first reading of this ordinance, so we will address it again in May.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Byington. That concludes our legislation. We have a staff report from our Public Works Department, and I believe that falls under your purview, correct, City Manager?
It does, Your Honor, and if it's okay with you, I'll do that report from my seat here tonight,
All right.
as opposed to from the podium. And you know, over the last 2 or 3 council meetings, we've had folks here from the Public Safety Department being recognized for different things and promotions and that sort of thing. And we all know we have a truly outstanding Public Safety Department. And I was talking to Chief Hill a week or so ago, and was touching on the point that, you know, we could have someone here from the Public Safety Department to publicly recognize every single month, because that's the kind of work they do, and they're top shelf. But you know, I'm here tonight to talk about the Public Works Department, and you know, I would argue that that department is loaded with just top-notch employees like our public safety department, and we're really blessed here in Oakwood to have just a fine group of folks that provide all the basic services, that are traditional with a public works department. So let me just take a few minutes tonight and talk about a few components of this, and I'll do it in terms of talking about the foreman, because I have 5 key people down there that carry the title of foreman or superintendent, and they're the ones that do the heavy lifting day in and day out and ensure that the Public Works Department employees themselves, who are also outstanding, have good direction and oversight and are provided the resources they need and basically are given all the tools they need to deliver their services. So I'll start with Kenneth Perkins. He's been here the longest and for many, many years has overseen all of our refuse programs. And there are a few things more important, I guess water and sewer probably, but I'd say right behind that is refuse, getting rid of your stuff day in and day out, and the spring cleaning and the garage cleaning and everything else, the yard debris. And Kenneth just does a wonderful job of overseeing that operation. And he's the right person for the job. He has a wonderful touch with our employees, and he responds to every need that arises, every concern that's raised, and just does it in a wonderful manner. So we have our dumpster program, and these things I'm going to talk about here are you can find information about these in the Oakwood Sea newsletter. Pretty much every edition has a sprinkling of this stuff in there, but it's important, and I just want to cover it. We have a dumpster program that's very heavily used. Any kind of a home cleanup, remodeling project underway that you're doing yourself, for $100 you can get a big dumpster from the city, have it for 2 or 3 days, load it up, make one phone call, we pick it up, it's gone. And depending on the debris, there is a little bit of an additional charge to dispose of it, whether it goes to a landfill or the county transfer station. But in total, the average bills are usually about $150, which is you can't beat that anywhere. And so it's a wonderful program. As you know, we have the Public Works Yard open the first Saturday of every month, year-round, and it's open from 8 to 12, and that's increasingly used by our citizens and very much appreciated. I'll stop in there on a Saturday morning, at 10 or 11 o'clock, and the one Public Works employee that we bring in on overtime to manage that almost every month tells me how many people thank them for being open to allow folks to just clean out rooms or again garages or that sort of thing and do self-dumping. The Krieger Field parking lot self-dumping facility is heavily used, as you all know, not just over the weekends, but even during the week. The cardboard recycling that we do is fantastic. We actually get money for the clean cardboard that we recycle, and it's amazing to me how those 2 or 3 cardboard containers are habitually used exclusively for cardboard. I mean, there's almost no illegal dumping that takes place in those, and that's just, fantastic if you think about it. And the degree to which we get money for that cardboard, of course, is a function of the fact that there's no extraneous material in there. So that's fantastic. And then we also have the commingled container down there and the yard debris containers. 2 or 3 or sometimes even 4 of those, depending on the time of the year. And every truckload or SUV load or sedan trunk load of yard debris that citizens take down there is that much more that we don't have to pick up at the curb. So that keeps the city cleaner, and it frees up our employees to engage in other work activity. I mentioned, our regular weekly house trash pickup year-round. 2 or 3 months ago, I remember sending you a photograph of the folks out there, when it was 5 degrees with a wind chill of -5, and by golly, Monday through Friday or Thursday, they do that regular pickup regardless of the weather conditions. And while we unfortunately are paying, more and more to get rid of the commingled recycling than we did a few years ago, just because of the national recycling market, it is still much cheaper for us to dispose of the commingled glass, plastic, paper, and all that recycling than it is to have it all thrown into our regular trash. So we continually encourage our citizens to recycle as much as they can. Kenneth also oversees the mulch program, and we're taking orders right now for that, and we've inspected the product. In fact, there's piles of it down at Public Works now, and for $90 you can get a big load of mulch that can go a long way on your property, or if you're a do-it-yourselfer and want to pick it up on your own, you can do that on 6 Saturdays here starting in a week or so. It's mentioned in the Oakwood Sea newsletter, and there's no cost for that. That's from 8 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And the last thing about Kenneth is he oversees our maintenance shop. And I know I've talked publicly about our 2 mechanics. We have 2 mechanics, full-time mechanics in the Public Works Department. They do outstanding work, and Kenneth is the one that, again, sees to it that they have the tools and the resources they need. He provides the oversight in decision-making on, do we, invest $5,000 or $10,000 rebuilding something one more time, or do we, look at a replacement schedule for it, or that sort of thing. And he does a good job of working with the other foremen who all have expertise in different fields to make sure that we make the best decisions there. I'll move to Gary Dersch, and Gary is our water production superintendent. He's our licensed operator in terms of responsibility with the state of Ohio for our public water system, and he oversees the operation of our 8 production wells. And a lot of our citizens, I think, know that we produce our own water, but a lot of them probably don't. But we do. We pump 100% of the water that's distributed around Oakwood out of the ground through these 8 wells, and the water is sent through 3 different treatment plants for some minor treatment. There's not any extensive treatment required for our groundwater. And then, of course, sent to all of our properties in Oakwood, residential and business properties, through our underground distribution system. But, Gary, again, oversees that on a daily basis. And while the other 4 foremen, and I'll get back to this in a moment, are on call on a rotating basis for emergencies, Gary is effectively on call 24/7, except for periods of time when he's on vacation. He happened to be off last week, so he's free for 1 week. But when he's not on vacation, he's on call 24/7. And fortunately, we don't need him often, but when we do, he's right here. So just does a great job for us. Tom Long is one of our foremen, also wears the hat of engineering technician. And Tom oversees the bigger construction projects, the repaving work. We're getting ready here to repave Deep Hollow Road, Wilshire Boulevard, Hadley Avenue and Hadley Road, and Acorn Drive from Patterson down to Delwood, those 4 streets this summer. And it's about a $210,000 investment in resurfacing streets. And Tom is, personally, singularly responsible for making sure that the contractor, notifies property owners as necessary, does follows the safety precautions, et cetera, and it probably most importantly gives us a good final product that will serve our community well. Here shortly, our traffic signal conflict monitor testing will take place, and probably nobody listening tonight knows what conflict monitor testing is, but basically every signalized intersection, and we have 17 of them in our small community, has a controller that controls and operates the signal. Well, inside that controller cabinet is a little device called a conflict monitor, and it is there for the sole purpose of watching the signal. And if ever there's a malfunction where a north-south and an east-west light wants to both be green, for instance, that thing goes into high alert and it shuts everything down.
That would be a bad thing.
Yes, that would be a bad thing. And it then puts the signal into a flashing red and a flashing yellow. It's an override. So it's a very important little device.
What's the name of that again?
It's a conflict monitor tester.
As an
Or a
insurance agent.
conflict monitor.
That's my favorite device.
And so every year, we have those those things tested, because you don't want the conflict monitor to fail
Okay.
in that point of an emergency situation. So, again, and Tom oversees all the traffic signal work and repair that's needed. The Vectron project is getting ready to start here soon. There'll be an open house here in the council chambers next Tuesday, April 10th, from 4:30 to 7. Now, it's organized and going to be run by Vectron, but Tom will be here. And Vectron has invited all of our residents within their project area. So that's from the southeast quadrant of Oakwood, from Monterey to Triangle, and then a section along East Drive where some major construction will take place. And so we're hoping that a number of citizens come here to learn a little bit more about the project and the impact it will have on them. Tom oversees our tree trimming. He works with Brian Caldwell, our horticulturist. Brian does the assessment of the trees and the notification to property owners that we're going to come through and do some trimming. Tom makes sure that the trimming operation is done in a safe and efficient manner and is done properly. And that's a year-round operation. And then we talked tonight about the Schaefer Park Tennis Court project. That's another major project that is Tom's responsibility to oversee. So, as soon as we have the pre-construction meeting, which I anticipate probably in the next 2 or so weeks we'll have with Bilbrey, from that moment on, all the way through the conclusion of the project, why Tom will be the eyes and ears of our city to make sure that everything is built per the plans and neighbors are informed of operations and that sort of thing. So does a great job for us. Dave Shuey is our roadway foreman. Year round, he makes sure that potholes are taken care of, pavement cracks are sealed, stormwater inlets are repaired, manholes are adjusted as needed. Basically everything from curb to curb, throughout our city. And we have a lot of pavement for a small 2.2 square mile community, but he's responsible for overseeing that. The storm sewers here, maybe this week, or maybe if not this week, then I think next week, a significant storm sewer repair will take place on Oakwood Avenue, just south of Park Avenue, not far from where we're at tonight here. And it'll be a several-day project, and Dave will be the one to oversee that and make sure, again, that the work is done properly and resident notification is made. Dave is also responsible for the Public Works facility. So when you drive in through the front gate there, everything you see from all the asphalt pavement to the main vehicle storage area, the office area, the HVAC, the plumbing, the whole 9 yards, anything that comes up in that building that requires, maintenance or repair, that falls under his purview. Chris Harold's our newest foreman, and he's in charge of the water and sanitary distribution system. So, an important position. If we have if a resident has a sewer issue or a water issue with the service line going to the home, or even a water problem in the house where they need the water shut off at the street, oftentimes, ideally, every property owner knows where the shutoff is next to their meter, and they know that they've tested that valve and know it works. But it's an old community, a lot of old homes, and that from time to time doesn't, occur. And you've got water spraying in a house, and we need very quick action to go out to the street and turn the valve off by the curb. And so all that sort of stuff falls under Chris's purview. There are challenging events, particularly during the tough parts of the year, wintertime, late at night, water main breaks, trenching, and safety issues related to that, and Chris has responsibility for all of the activity related to that. We're going to start flushing fire hydrants next Monday, and that's about a 4-week operation throughout the city. We not only flow the hydrant to kind of flush out the lines, but it's also a time when we test the hydrant to make sure, annually, that if we ever need, or through our fire department, a hydrant, why we know it's been tested and it's going to work for us. And then, like Dave has responsibility for the Public Works facility, Chris Harold has responsibility for the city building, public safety building. So he, and the two of them, work under Jennifer's oversight as they may have needs, resources and that sort of thing. But if we have a problem here, and one day late last week, some water was coming through the roof in the judge's office, of all places, and you instantly, Chris gets a call, and he comes over here and figures out what needs to be done to make the repair. So, and I mentioned earlier, the standby on-call 24/7. Gary Dersch is it pretty much year-round, other than vacation time. The other four, Ken, Tom, Dave, and Chris, they take 7 days at a time. So throughout the entire year, we always have one of the four available 24/7, and it's common that they'll get called in once or twice during that period. Trees down in a street, power cables down, again, water main breaks, sewer issues, you name it. Any emergency that comes up, the dispatcher calls them, and they're here in short order. And then I'll close my comments. I'm going a little bit long here. The heart and soul of Public Works is the person that picks up the phone when our residents call down there, and that's Missy Seifert. And Missy's been here just over a year now, and it's just a wonderful, friendly, helpful person on the other end of the phone line when you call. And we hired her from the city of Kettering, but you may recall that she was here before she went to Kettering, and she was our receptionist here at the city building. And we were so impressed with her in that position that when we had an opening down at Public Works, we got Missy back. So she just does a wonderful job and works extremely well with not only the foremen, the 5 of them, but also with the rest of the Public Works staff. So we have a great department down there, and I'm real proud of them. Yep.
Well,
So
thank
that's
you
all I
very
have.
much.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for our Director of Public Works?
We didn't have Jennifer fix that leak in the ceiling?
Well, she
thought that was part of
she was in
her,
Florida with you, Mr. Stevens.
Okay, but if she was in town, she would have fixed that leak, right? I mean, she knows about all her new responsibilities, right? Jay would have fixed it.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Jay would have called Chris.
Yeah, moving right along,
So would Jennifer.
do we have a city manager report on top of your Public Works report?
I don't have anything else, Your Honor.
Okay. Then it would be time for council comments, and Councilmember Epley.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no comments this evening.
All right. Councilmember Hilton,
Nor do I, Your Honor.
Councilmember Stevens,
I do not have any comments this evening.
Vice Mayor Byington.
Ditto.
Ditto. Wow. Well, you guys are shaming me. I had 14 comments, but I will defer them.
Cut it in half? You're going to cut it in half?
Until cut them in half. I'll do that until our next meeting. But our next meeting will, in fact, be on May 7, which is a Monday. And this meeting is adjourned.